In 1995, at the dawn of the internet era, a small online bookseller launched from a Seattle garage with a simple but audacious aim to harness the web's explosive growth and build a store of unlimited selection. Guided by the unwavering drive of its founder, Jeff Bezos, the young company quickly expanded beyond books, pushing into music, movies, electronics, and toys. Even as the dot-com bubble burst and skepticism mounted, Amazon refined its logistics, mastered its distribution networks, and pressed on. Its rise was hardly uncontested. Barnes & Noble challenged its claim to be the world's largest bookstore. eBay dominated online marketplaces. Walmart, the titan of physical retail, prepared for battle. Yet Amazon's long-term thinking, willingness to experiment, and unyielding customer focus allowed it to outmaneuver rivals again and again. Today, Amazon is no longer just a retailer, but a sprawling technology and services empire, spanning cloud computing, digital devices, entertainment, and global logistics. Its scale is so vast that the phrase, "to be Amazoned," has entered the business vocabulary. It describes what happens when Amazon enters a market and rapidly absorbs customers, market share, and profits. This is the story of how one company's ambition transformed not just retail, but the very expectations of an entire generation of consumers. Part 1. Jeffrey. Jeff Bezos's first literary appearance was not in a business profile, but in a niche book about a pioneering program for gifted children in Houston. While touring his elementary school, the writer of that book was accompanied by sixth grader Jeff Bezos, whose intensity shone through at such a young age. Friendly but serious, and with sandy hair, the boy devoured books, compared his performance to that of his classmates, and spoke articulately about independent thinking. But behind that precocious student was a family story more complicated than it first appeared. Jeffrey Preston Jorgensen was born in 1964 to teenage parents Jacqueline Geis and Ted Jorgensen. They were young, overwhelmed, and ultimately incompatible, and so their marriage dissolved quickly. 2 years later, Jackie, determined to build stability for her son, met a Cuban immigrant named Mike Bezos. Mike would legally adopt Jeff, providing him with the foundation of a tightly knit family and the name he would carry forward. Yet the values that would most profoundly shape Jeff came from another source entirely. Jeff spent his summers at the Texas ranch of his maternal grandparents, where his pop embodied the ethic that any problem could be solved with ingenuity and persistence. Jeff learned to repair machinery, castrate cattle, and approach work with patience and discipline. By high school, Bezos's intellectual drive was unmistakable, a quality that would carry him to Princeton University. There, he double-majored in electrical engineering and computer science, graduating with highest honors. After Princeton, Bezos spent several years working in finance before landing at his most consequential job. In 1990, Bezos joined D.E. Shaw and Company, a quantitative hedge fund that blended mathematics, computer science, and finance in ways few firms had attempted. Bezos thrived in this environment, rising quickly to become one of the firm's youngest vice presidents. David Shaw, the founder and a former computer science professor, recognized not just Bezos's analytical brilliance, but his ability to think expansively about the future while executing decisively in the present. It was also at D.E. Shaw that Bezos met Mackenzie Tuttle, a Princeton graduate and aspiring novelist who worked as a research associate at the firm. Their connection was immediate. She was struck by his infectious laugh and outsized ambition, and they married in 1993. The following year, David Shaw personally assigned Bezos to explore business opportunities on the internet. As Bezos carried out his research, he encountered a statistic that stopped him cold. Web usage was growing at 230,000%. What began as an assignment became an obsession. He began listing products that could be sold online, evaluating each against criteria like shipping costs and selection variety. Books emerged as ideal. They were uniform commodities where buyers always knew what they were getting, with millions in print, far more than any Barnes & Noble could ever stock. Though his ambition was much greater, books were the perfect place to start. But Bezos knew that if he pursued the venture inside D.E. Shaw, it would never truly be his company. That spring, he told David Shaw he was leaving to start an online bookstore. Shaw suggested they take a walk, and for 2 hours they wandered Central Park discussing the decision. Bezos applied what he called his regret minimization framework. He imagined himself at 80 and realized he would never regret walking away from a Wall Street bonus, but he might deeply regret missing the internet revolution. The choice became clear. Later that month, Bezos and Mackenzie packed their apartment and headed west towards Seattle. Bezos typed revenue projections into an Excel spreadsheet from the passenger seat. At 31 and 24, they were leaving Wall Street behind to sell books over the internet. Part 2. Day 1. From a rented house in the Seattle suburb of Bellevue, working out of its garage, the venture's first name was Cadabra, a play on the magic word abracadabra, but the name was changed because it sounded like cadaver over the phone. While brainstorming alternatives, the couple grew particularly fond of relentless.com, which to this day redirects to Amazon. But Bezos had his epiphany while flipping through the dictionary. Amazon, Earth's largest river, Earth's largest bookstore. The first employee was Shel Caffin, a Bay Area programmer who'd spent his youth working at Stewart Brand's Whole Earth truck store, packing books and catalogs for customers. He and Bezos set up shop in the garage, where Bezos built the first desks from $60 doors purchased at Home Depot, an origin story that would take on biblical significance within the company. They were soon joined by Paul Davis, a British programmer whose colleagues passed around a coffee can to collect money for him in case the startup failed. Together, they built Amazon's primitive website. The public version went live on July 16, 1995, and they were immediately overwhelmed with orders, falling behind from day one. Each time a customer made a purchase, someone would have to order the book from a distributor. And because no one had been hired to pack books yet, the small team descended to the basement each night to fill orders on the floor. A week after launch, Jerry Yang and David Filo from Yahoo asked if Amazon wanted to be featured on their site. The team debated whether they were ready for the flood of traffic when they were already drowning, but they did it anyway. Within the first month, they had sold books to customers in all 50 states and 45 countries. The atmosphere in those early days was a blend of exhilaration and sheer exhaustion. Despite their sudden global reach, the operation remained shockingly rudimentary. Employees worked around the clock in cramped rooms with no distinct departments, where software engineers stopped coding to pack boxes on concrete floors. It was the genesis of the day one mentality, a belief that despite their immediate success, they were only at the very beginning of what the internet would allow them to build. A terrifying but electrifying realization that forced this ragtag group to scale their makeshift systems faster than any of them had thought possible. By the fall of 1995, Amazon moved into a 2,000 square foot office. Needing capital to expand, they raised millions of dollars, first from friends and family, and eventually from prestigious venture capital firms such as Kleiner Perkins. With fresh capital in the bank, the directive shifted from mere survival to absolute dominance. The quiet garage days were replaced by hundreds of new employees working 60-hour weeks as the company poured resources into software and distribution centers. On May 15, 1997, Amazon went public on NASDAQ at $18 per share, raising $54 million and drawing the attention of retail giants. The stock price tripled by year's end. Bezos, at 33, was suddenly worth hundreds of millions of dollars on paper, but he poured profits back into the business, living by a mantra that would define Amazon: get big, fast. The company expanded its staff and product lines aggressively. In 1998, Amazon began selling music, then movies, electronics, and toys. Sites were launched in the UK and Germany, marking Amazon's first international expansion. Then, in March 2000, the dot-com bubble burst. The NASDAQ peaked and then collapsed. Companies that had seemed invincible weeks earlier folded almost overnight. Pets.com, Cosmo, Webvan, firms Amazon had invested in, disintegrated. Amazon's stock price, which had soared past $100 per share in December 1999, plummeted 90% over the next 2 years, dropping below $6. But Bezos had prepared for this moment. In early 2000, before the crash, Amazon had secured a $600 million credit line. That cash cushion, combined with Bezos's fanatical focus on cash flow management rather than accounting profits, kept Amazon solvent when hundreds of competitors vanished. More importantly, Bezos used the crisis to transform the company. He imposed strict financial discipline, laid off staff, closed failed initiatives, and rebuilt Amazon's operations around efficiency and customer obsession. The company finally posted its first profit, 1 cent per share, in the fourth quarter of 2001, on revenues exceeding $1 billion. The margin was microscopic, but it proved the skeptics wrong. Bezos's unconventional business model could work. Part 3. The Everything Store. By 2002, Amazon had survived its near-death experience and proven that e-commerce could be profitable. But Jeff Bezos was not interested in merely running a successful online retailer. He wanted to build something unprecedented, a company that could sell everything to everyone, and in doing so, become essential infrastructure for modern life. The first breakthrough came from an insight about customer behavior. Amazon's data showed that shipping costs were the primary reason customers abandoned shopping carts. Even when products were cheaper on Amazon than in stores, the added shipping fee often tipped the decision back toward driving to the mall. The answer emerged in 2005, Amazon Prime. For $79 per year, members would receive unlimited 2-day shipping. The program was risky. Analysts estimated Amazon would lose money on each Prime member. But Bezos believed that if customers paid up front, they would consolidate more of their shopping on Amazon to justify the membership fee. He was right. Prime members spent more, shopped more frequently, and rarely compared prices with competitors. The membership fee created a psychological lock-in. Customers wanted to get their money's worth, which meant buying more on Amazon. Within 2 years, Prime had millions of members and was fundamentally changing how Americans shopped. While Prime was reshaping retail, Bezos was quietly pursuing another obsession, reinventing the book itself. In the early 2000s, Amazon watched Apple's iTunes and iPod decimate the CD market. Bezos realized that physical media was destined to become digital. He feared that if Amazon didn't lead the way in ebooks, Apple or Google would. Bezos assembled a secret team, codenamed Lab 126, in Silicon Valley and gave them an audacious mandate: build an e-reader so good that it would disappear, letting readers forget they were using a device. The first Kindle launched in November 2007, priced at $399. It sold out in 5.5 hours. Critics derided its industrial design. One reviewer called it ugly, but readers loved it. The ability to carry an entire library and buy new books instantly was transformative. The Kindle would eventually evolve into a full line of tablets and e-readers, but its impact went beyond devices. It established Amazon as a hardware company capable of creating products customers loved. And it demonstrated Bezos's willingness to cannibalize Amazon's own business, physical book sales, in pursuit of a larger vision. But the most transformative product Amazon created in the 2000s wasn't something customers could see or touch. It emerged from the messy reality of Amazon's own technology infrastructure, a problem so severe that solving it would accidentally create a second empire. The initiative was called Service-Oriented Architecture, and it was brutal to implement. Teams had to rebuild systems from scratch. Deadlines were missed. But gradually, Amazon created a set of robust, scalable technology services that powered its own operations. Then someone asked a provocative question. If these services were good enough for Amazon, why not sell them to other companies? Bezos saw the opportunity. Startups and corporations were all building the same basic infrastructure: servers, storage, databases. What if Amazon could rent out its infrastructure, letting companies focus on their unique products instead of reinventing the wheel? Amazon launched Amazon Web Services with 2 products: S3, or Simple Storage Service, and EC2, Elastic Compute Cloud. Developers could rent server capacity by the hour and storage by the gigabyte, paying only for what they used. Startups loved it. Instead of buying servers and hiring IT staff, they could launch a company with a credit card and scale up as they grew. By 2015, AWS had become Amazon's most profitable business. It also made Amazon indispensable to the modern internet. A huge portion of the web ran on AWS infrastructure, from startups to Fortune 500 companies. With Prime hooking consumers, Kindle transforming publishing, and AWS powering the internet, Bezos pushed Amazon into every corner of commerce. The company's expansion became ruthless. Fulfillment by Amazon allowed third-party sellers to store inventory in the company's warehouses, with Amazon handling packing, shipping, and customer service. The 2012 acquisition of robotics firm Kiva Systems brought tens of thousands of robots to its fulfillment centers, automating operations to handle millions of packages. The expansion came at a cost. Amazon's corporate culture was notoriously demanding, with high attrition and intense performance expectations. Fulfillment centers drew scrutiny too, with workers reporting timed breaks, mandatory overtime, and metrics tracking their every move. Still, Amazon pressed forward. Not every bet succeeded. The Fire Phone, launched in 2014 with fanfare, flopped spectacularly and was discontinued within a year. But the company kept innovating. It launched Amazon Studios to produce original films and television, competing with Netflix and HBO. In 2014, it introduced the Echo smart speaker and Alexa voice assistant, which became a surprise hit, selling hundreds of millions of units and embedding Amazon into customers' homes. Then in 2017, Amazon made its boldest physical retail move, acquiring Whole Foods for $13.7 billion and gaining 460 grocery stores overnight. The company now spanned retail, technology, entertainment, and even groceries. The everything store had arrived. Epilogue. By 2020, Amazon employed over 1 million people worldwide and had become essential infrastructure for modern commerce. In February 2021, Bezos announced he would step down as CEO, handing control to Andy Jassy, the longtime leader of AWS. After nearly 3 decades, the founder was stepping back. Bezos turned his attention to Blue Origin, his space company, and 5 months later flew to space aboard its New Shepard rocket. He committed $10 billion to the Bezos Earth Fund to combat climate change and remained involved with the Washington Post, which he'd purchased in 2013. The company he left behind continued to dominate. By 2024, Amazon generated over $600 billion in annual revenue. Prime had over 200 million members. AWS powered 30% of the global cloud market. The garage startup had become a global colossus that fundamentally changed how the world shops, reads, and computes. And true to his philosophy, it remained day one, still inventing, still expanding, still building the future. This was The Everything Store by Brad Stone, first published in 2013. Thanks for listening.